loved ones, welcome to the first installment of the 3 free video series for all of you beautiful, newly woken up, spiritually activated women that are wanting to learn more about the path of the divine feminine and even maybe the path of the witch, the medicine woman. So this video is all about the moon because that is the perfect place to start if you're wanting to get into that more feminine aspect of yourself. It's absolutely essential to have a relationship with the moon, in fact, in that case. So I taught a workshop actually a few days ago at the time of the recording of this video all about the moon. And when I was preparing for the workshop, a beautiful, intimate workshop, connected group of women, super awesome. When I was preparing, at the beach, it was awesome, and I was coming up with these questions and these topics and things to talk about. But the first place that I wanted to start, the first question that came up to me was, well, why would we even want to be in touch with the moon anyway? Why is it important? Why is it even interesting? So we'll get into that in this video, and hopefully after watching, you'll have a really good understanding of just how connected you are, especially as a female, to the moon, and start to honor and pay attention to her cycles more and more and more, and you will just discover this whole new world that really opens a lot of self-understanding up for you. So firstly, the first thing to note is that our bodies are natural conduits of the Earth's energy. What I mean by that is literally every cell, every morsel, every skin particle, every fingernail, the liver, the lungs, everything is made up of parts of the Earth. So for an example, you see the forest behind me. Well, all of these beautiful leaves, all of these beautiful parts of the forest are made up of many of the same building blocks that our bodies are made up of. And, as a leaf decomposes, it falls off, it goes to the forest floor and becomes brown and starts to rot and decompose and returns to the soil and to the system, and more plants pop up, and maybe they pop up in the form of a carrot, and we eat that carrot, and that's how the cycle works. And when we have that carrot, it turns into the cells and the makeup, the building blocks of our body. So we literally are just parts of the Earth that are in this cycle, in this harmonious cycle, imbued with consciousness. So when we pay attention to the fact that, okay, we know that the moon influences the Earth, we know that the tides are entirely affected by the moon, that huge body of water on our planet, about 70%, is completely influenced by the moon. Well, we're also made up of water as well, so water and Earth, we're about the same constituent, I don't know how to say that word, but the same amount, like 70%, I think. Don't quote me on this. I was just bringing up a point of we're mostly water as well. And so we're water and we're Earth, and we know that the moon affects the water and the Earth, and it makes sense then that we're affected by the moon. So even physically, we can look at that and say, okay, yeah, something's going on. So when we keep going, with that, okay, well then if the moon is so, linked to us as humans, and especially as women, then why aren't we talking more about it? Why don't we know more about it? So an example would be, okay, go on the street and stop someone and say, hey, how do you feel when it's sunny outside? They're probably going to say, oh, well, if they don't say, why are you asking me that? You're so strange. But after they get over that, they'll probably say, well, I feel happy and I feel energized. I feel, more social. I just feel like more upbeat. And then ask that same person in our, make-believe example, okay, well, how do you feel when it's a new moon? And you will probably get crickets. They probably would not have any idea of how they feel on a new moon. And for a lot of people, they might not even really consciously understand what a new moon is. I was totally one of those people. For many years, I didn't even realize that there was a night in the cycle where the moon was completely dark. There was nothing. There was no moon, new moon in the sky. And why is that? Why is that? Why do people pay attention so much to the sun and not to the moon? And we're going to go even deeper into this. So the sun is traditionally associated with the masculine. So that sort of bright, directive, outward energy is that of the masculine. The sun makes its own light, it's exuding. Whereas the moon is actually receiving the light of the sun. That's how it lights up in the sky, and it's traditionally associated with the feminine. So it's darker, it's softer, it's associated with the unknown and the dark night. And sometimes, like I said, it disappears and there is nothing, it's unknown. And so we have the sun, the more masculine directive, and we have the moon representing the more feminine, introspective, inward energy. And it makes a lot of sense why we're not paying attention to the moon as much, because we are currently living in a patriarchal society where we pay attention and we value the more masculine directive aspects of life more than the introspective, softer, unknown aspects of life. For example, work hard to get what you want, a completely very masculine-oriented idea, something that probably we've all grown up with and probably most of us have accepted as truth. If you want to get where you want to be in life, you just have to really, really work for it. Well, it's a very masculine, way of going about this. And, there's so many examples. Look at the church, look at politics, look at the family, traditional family structure. We know that we live in a completely patriarchal society. So, when we get in touch with the moon, when we start paying attention more to the moon, what we're doing is we're getting in touch with the more feminine aspects of existence. And through that connection and through that relationship, we are actually imbuing ourselves with more feminine energy, a stronger connection to the divine feminine. And therefore, we become conduits for the feminine energy known as the goddess. So, when we get in touch with the moon, we're actually a part of this huge uprising and this huge shift that's happening right now that is starting to celebrate the rise of the divine feminine. So really, when we get in touch with the moon, a bird just flew by. That was awesome. They're so excited. Nature's so excited about this. And it just, I don't know if you can hear that one. I love the woman. I love the feminine. So yeah, when we get in touch with the moon, we're getting in touch with the feminine, and we're bringing her to the forefront of this massive shift on the earth. And we're also becoming more and more truly feminine within ourselves. So when that happens, we have an easier time receiving, we have an easier time manifesting, we have an easier time relaxing, we exude more sensual, feminine, je ne sais quoi energy, and you become that girl in the room that people look at and say, there's something about that girl. I can't put my finger on it, but there's just something different about her, she's got good vibes. So that's, those are the huge reasons, that's how the moon affects us, and that's why we need to get in touch with it, because as women, we have this responsibility to really reconnect with our feminine energy so we can celebrate it. Another reason why I feel like it's so important to connect with the moon is that we understand ourselves so much better. I know for me this is really, really the case, and I'll tell you what I mean. So the moon, and we'll get into this in, the coaching program later on, but for now, let's just talk about the Cole's notes, I guess, of what we'll talk about in the full course. The moon actually transitions into a new sign every 2.5 days. So when it's the new moon and when it's the full moon, the new moon and the full moon are always in different signs. Example: new moon in Cancer, full moon in Scorpio, new moon in Aries. And we're going to get into this, like I said, more into the program. So we're not going to pay attention too much to that. However, the point is, and every 2.5 days it will switch. So if it's a new moon in Aries, in 2.5 days it will switch into a new sign. And when you start to pay attention to the charting and the course of the moon, you'll understand yourself so much better. Oh my goodness. Because, what will happen? One day you're super energetic, you're super happy, you're super bright, you're super inspired. Maybe the moon is, in Aries. Or maybe it's in... a sign that correlates to you. Maybe it's in your sun sign. It's in a sign that really brings up your inspiration. But maybe in a few days you're feeling sort of restless. You're feeling like you have ants in your pants. You're not feeling that go-to inspiration quite as much. More so you're just feeling kind of anxious in your body. maybe the moon, and you'll find this out if you have a lunar calendar, is in Gemini for those couple of days, which is a very chatty, sort of restless sign. And it's so helpful because that example is like actually straight from my life example. So when the moon transitioned into Gemini that day and I found out, oh, the moon is in Gemini, I'm feeling super restless, like I can't get stuff done, I was much easier on myself. Because a couple days before that, I had, so much energy and inspiration, and usually I would have just, judged myself, right? I want that energy, that inspiration back. But when you're paying attention to the moon, you can understand, oh, this is just the cycles. The moon is cyclical, and women are cyclical. So when you're paying attention, you're easier on yourself because you understand where your emotions are coming from. Another example, a few weeks ago, I was so tired. I could not get out of bed at all this day, and like nothing really interesting had happened the night before. I wasn't out or doing anything crazy, but I didn't get out of bed until 3 p.m. 3 o'clock in the afternoon. The moon was in Cancer that day, and I am a Cancer, and it was just so interesting to know that I was being influenced by the moon moving through my sun sign, and I was being affected by the planetary energies. I really felt like the moon in Cancer had a lot to do with me just needing to nurture myself and rebuild. And in that way, I could accept it more easily. I was easier on myself. I didn't need to be super up there and energetic because I knew that there would be a time for that as well, just as there was a time for me to be softer, quieter, and more restful. So that's probably the biggest beautiful thing about being in touch with the moon right now for me, is that I can understand myself easier. And when you start doing this as well, you ladies watching, you will definitely be able to notice those shifts, how they affect you, and you'll be able to have more of an understanding of why you're feeling the way that you do that day, and you'll be able to accept it and honor it more. Because as women, we're cyclical. As parts of the earth, we're cyclical. We move in cycles, and we're going to be feeling different every day. So this really helps us to accept that. So that's probably all I'll leave you with. And when we get into the course, those of you who do join for the full experience, we'll be getting way more into all of this. And even if you don't join us for that, now that you're, watching these videos, you are on the list, so you'll be getting a free coaching video every Monday talking about what the moon is doing. So happy moon loving to you goddesses, and I'll see you for the next video. Looking forward to it.